Welcome to the Butler Did It. I'm your host, Adam Butler, back with another episode. Thank you so kindly for being here. All right, guys. I talked about this a little bit on my sneaker podcast. Shout outs to the What Are Those podcast. Shout outs to the Upper Game Network. Go ahead and find that show on that network. I talked about it from a business standpoint. Today, we're going to talk about this from a human standpoint. We're going to talk about Ja Morant, his latest drama, what I think is going on with him, and why I think it's important, and why I think that some of the commentary around it is piss poor. Okay? But before that, I want to encourage you guys to subscribe to this podcast on both YouTube and all podcasting platforms, or whatever podcasting platform you listen to podcasts on. Like, share, rate, and review this podcast. That helps with the algorithm. That helps get the podcast in the eyes of other viewers. And I also want to give a big shout out to everybody that constantly supports this show, man. Last week I had a little bit of a rant. But I had to get that off my chest. This podcasting thing is important to me, man. I've been at it for a long time. I often start from the bottom and build it up again. I'm not going to go through all that. I just want to say thank you to everybody that kind of allowed me to have that moment on this show, because I know that everybody tunes in to hear that. And so you don't really tune in to just hear about me and what I think about things. Well, obviously you tune in to hear what I think about things, but you're not always tuning in to hear my vents and my rants and, my rebuttals against what someone said about me. So thank you for that moment. All right. Okay. Let's talk about Ja Morant. So, as many of you know, Ja Morant is a NBA superstar, young man, 23 years old, phenom, man. He is, for my listeners that aren't familiar with basketball at all, he is one of the more talented athletes I've seen in a long time. I remember when he was in college and me and my boy Derek talking about, this Ja Morant kid, man, he's like jumping over people. What's up with him? Boy, I hope he plays for the Wizards. That's our home team. Obviously, he didn't. He ended up being drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies, and immediately he was an impact, man. This guy was exciting to watch, is exciting to watch. And it felt like the league was starting to make a transition into a crop of younger players, which included Ja Morant and others, to sort of pass that torch from the LeBrons and the KDs and the Chris Pauls of the world, right, into the Ja Morants of the world. And, last year during the playoffs, Ja Morant felt like a great story. His dad, T. Morant, was at all the games. He was dancing after games. His dad, it was like this great image of him and his dad, and then like other players' dads showing up. And to me, that's important, because fatherhood is important to me. Not just me as a father, but my father is important to me. And the image of black fatherhood is important to me. Some people making fun of Ja's dad because he a little hood, you know what I mean? And I was like, but you know what, though? It's still a good thing, because he is a very young man, that his father was out there with him at every game. I thought this was beautiful. Also, I do want to give a full warning real quick, just as a side. I'm a little stuffy today. My allergies are bothering me today. So if I sound a little nasally, I apologize. So these were positive images, I thought. And for me, as a person who cares about the image of black people, specifically the image of black men and black boys, all of this, I was just a fan of Ja Morant. Now, you give a kid a little bit of money, the kid get a little bit of fame on him, a little bit of attention on him, some negative things start to happen. Sometimes it's not even your fault. The devil shows up. The devil shows up when you start doing good things. So, you start hearing little stuff about Ja Morant, little lawsuits and fight at the mall and, little things like this. Okay, it's not good, but he's a young man with a lot of money and a lot of attention on him. Nobody expects him to be an angel. Nobody expects him to you know, just be this gleaming, light of, beacon of hope. No, he's a human. I think that's important for young black men as well, to be humans. I think that giving grace to young black people, especially black men and black boys, is vital. I do. I do think that sometimes when black boys and black men make mistakes, we lower the boom on them. Not just white people, black people too. I'm just talking about black boys. I'm not talking about how we treat black women. That's a whole other issue, and you know how we treat black women, and we need to be better at how we treat black women. But I think we're starting to have grace for black women as well, and I would like to see that on both sides. But again, I'm not comparing how we treat black girls. I could do a whole show on how we treat black girls and how we need to do better by black girls. So I was willing to give Ja some grace. My good friend Shannon, who I know listens to this show, knows that I had been a huge supporter of Ja Morant. Little things, throwing up gang signs, or what looked like gang signs after he scored, the kind of tough guy persona. I kind of understood it because, he's he plays a tough guy on the court. This is a guy that runs down the court and just tries to jump over grown men, 7-foot men, and dunk on them on a hardwood floor. So I thought, you know what? You got to have a kind of nutty mentality to want to just jump over a dude, give up your body, and just dunk on somebody. You know what I mean? That's how I saw it. Then it was a situation, I believe in Colorado, during the season where Ja Morant had been videoed, on Instagram Live, I believe, with a gun. And this was a big deal. It even kind of got legal for a while because it was all about like gun laws in Colorado, had he violated. But the thing he definitely violated was the morality clause. The morality clause within his NBA contract. I'm going to say this again because this is going to be important a little bit later. He violated his morality clause for his employer. He violated his morality clause for his employer. Okay. I just want to make sure you heard me on that one. All right. So he got a suspension. He went to rehab. He did an interview with Jalen Rose. All the things you do when you get in trouble. I remember thinking, rehab. Then shortly after, a picture of like a strip club he was in, which is like the floor is covered with money. Now things are starting to go down for Ja Morant. There were other little issues. Some of them are popping up on screen. A laser pointer being pointed at like a NBA staff. People being afraid to get his gun. His entourage, a little goony, a little spooky. His dad gets into a visible argument at a Lakers game with Shannon Sharp. Almost a fight. They do make up in the second half, as men should. But that was the thing. Ja Morant barking. You got clips of LeBron basically telling that Memphis team. I've talked about that Memphis team on this show before and how I think they just goofies. And so that's the perception of them. There was a rumor about his mom, a report of his mom calling him to go basically beat up somebody at a mall. Why would that happen? Him suing some kid because they got into a fight on the back. Just now the drama is on for Ja Morant. But Ja Morant's team got into the playoffs. He played hard. He hurt his hand. The one thing no one's going to say about him and that Memphis team is that he was soft. He didn't take responsibility when he lost. He said, a lot of my jabbering and a lot of my stuff over the season hurt my team. To me, he went out like a man. And I was proud of Ja Morant because I'm a fan of Ja Morant. I was proud of Ja Morant because I was a fan of Ja Morant. I wanted Ja Morant to show me that he could grow up. After all of these incidents, I gave him mulligan after mulligan. For me, as a fan of the game, as a fan of black people, as a black person, as a fan of black people, yeah, I'm a fan of black people, but as a black man, I wanted this young black man to prove me right. Does Ja Morant care what I got to say? No, of course not. But for me, to prove me right, show me that you are what I think you can be, which is a young man that just needs some grace. That's just trying to figure it out. I remember one of the last conversations I had with my boy Shannon, because this, again, is who I talk to about Ja Morant a lot. I said, you know what, though? I think Ja Morant going to be all right. He going to figure it out. My man did not respond to me because I know he didn't believe that. So fast forward to now, let's get to the point. Ja Morant is on Instagram Live again. Season's over. He's at home watching. He's in a car with his boys. They party, doing whatever. They listen to whoever. I get it. I'm mad because they want Instagram Live. Young people get on Instagram Live. That's just what they do. They're open to the world. That's just what they do. I'm not trying to stop progress and how people. It's not what I'm trying to do. But as they're partying, his boy, obviously, he's with Ja Morant. He want everybody to know I'm with Ja Morant. Ja Morant pulls out his pistol and starts to wave it. And to his boy's credit, that's why I'm not going to blame his man. Everybody told him, you need better people around him. No. To his boy's credit, he tried to put the phone down as quick as he could. The next shot is the gun is gone. So here's Ja Morant, a young man who likes to carry around guns, who likes to wave them around, who talks about there's a parade in my city after games, who quotes, trap rappers, who loves the street life. That's just keep it a buck. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that someone went through his Instagram or like his old tweets or something and saw him just, the gooniest of goony tweets. Again, kids, it is what it is. But that is my point. So the question becomes, what should happen to Ja Morant? He is violated twice. He already been suspended for waving the gun around. Obviously, all these lawsuits and little dramas, okay, all this context. And now, after all that, you still feel the need to pull out a gun and wave it around. What's going on? What should happen to him? There's many opinions out there. I want to play you one. The first is from JJ Redick. JJ Redick is a former NBA player who has become a giant media personality. Let's see what JJ Redick had to say.
NBA. You are a role model to young kids. All of that. I don't think half a season is the right answer. And the last point I want to make, because you bring this up, the guns on social media. We talk about consequences. Look, in our country right now, gun culture is pervasive. It's pervasive. We've got mass shooting after mass shooting, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it. So I get why we're so sensitive to this right now. But there's no consequence for Greg Abbott telling his constituents that they should go buy more guns, and then we have mass shooting after mass shooting in Texas. There's no consequence for an elected Tennessee official to send out a Christmas card holding AR-15s with his young family, and then there's a shooting in his very district. There's no consequences to that. So why are we trying to lay down the hammer on a 23-year-old who didn't break a law?
Okay. So that's JJ Redick's opinion. All right. Now, the next clip I'm going to play you is Charles Barkley. I would play you the entire TNT crew, but I'm just going to play you Charles Barkley's opinion on Ja Morant. Here we go.
Well, first of all, I got to say something, man. We got some idiots, some fools, some jackasses on television that really just piss me off, talking about Ja should make a stand saying he didn't break any laws. He didn't do anything wrong. We're in the state where you can carry your gun. Those guys are just freaking idiots. And I only say freaking because y'all won't let me say what I want to say.
We don't care for it.
It pisses me off when I hear guys say that, yo, man, when you're making $100 million a year to play sports, your life changes. There are certain rules and regulations you have to live by, plain and simple. You can't do stupid stuff. That's the trade-off. Now, if you want to do all that stuff and give all that money back, more power to you. You can make that stand. Say, you know what? I want to do what I want to do. I want to flash my gun and make videos and do things. Okay, that's fine. But you can't make money on the NBA doing this stuff.
Okay, so when I tell you that these two opinions express how I feel right now. Both of them express my conflict when it comes to this kid who I don't know, but I had an affinity for, a special, I looked at him and I thought was special, and I liked everything about his story. I just broke it down for you, why I was attracted to Ja Morant as a basketball player and as a public figure. Now, on my What Are Those show, I talked about what will happen with his sneaker contract and things like that. Now, I'm not the first. Well, I don't know if I was one of the first people to talk about it, but I'm sure there are a bunch of people talking about what's going to happen to Ja Morant, what type of suspension should he have, what's going to happen to his Nike contract, this, that, and another, right? And the discourse has moved from what should happen to why are we talking about what's going to happen to him? You heard JJ Redick talk about that. This upsets me because I feel like we're moving the goalposts all around the field now. Here's why I'm pissed off at Ja Morant and why I'm so conflicted and why I tend to side with Charles Barkley and why I do understand what JJ Redick had to say. And I want to feel like JJ Redick. I'm being honest with you. I want to feel like JJ Redick, and I feel like I felt like JJ Redick with all of the other incidents. But why I'm leaning towards the Charles Barkley side is because it's not the same as some white person in Texas who's just a gun nut. And as much as these mass shootings are tragic as hell, even the idea of how we report mass shootings and how we discuss mass shootings in America and how shocked we are by the shocking idea of a mass shooting pisses me off. I'm from Washington, D.C. Right now in Washington, D.C., these are the murder numbers. They're astronomical. There's shootings every single day in my city. Some of them classify as mass shootings, and they're not going to make CNN. If you want to talk about mass shootings and you want to talk about some Republican who you just get irritated by because they wave a gun, I'm with you on that. But do not throw this in that situation. Do not try to turn this into a pro-guns conversation. It's stupid. I do not care if Ja Morant's gun was registered or not. We know what Ja Morant is representing when he's listening to certain type of music that I grew up on and we all grew up on, and he's waving a gun. Let's just talk about that for a second. Let's not marginalize and let's not ignore what that represents and how important it can be. I just told you that Ja Morant has the opportunity to be the face of the league, had the opportunity to be the face of the NBA. Who's the face of the NBA right now? LeBron James. What do we praise LeBron James for? When you have a LeBron James versus Jordan conversation, sometimes people don't even talk about basketball. They just tell you how good of a person LeBron is and how bad of a person they thought Michael Jordan was. How LeBron reminds you of Ali and Russell and people that are stand up. The one thing I ain't never going to say about LeBron James is that he's not a stand up dude. LeBron James has played 20 years and never had an incident like that. Never. It is not hard. Don't tell me it's difficult for this kid to not ride around in a car waving his gun on Instagram Live. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that this kid has some sort of problem and we need to. Don't tell me that. That's not helping Ja Morant. You all wanting to virtue signal. Okay? You all wanting to virtue signal. I don't even like to use language like that because it's so associated with, honestly, the right and people that are against wokeness and all that. I don't like to even use language like that. But sometimes it just is what it is. When you want to seem like you are the world's most virtuous person and you want to just say, and honestly, you just want to contradict I don't even know what the goal is, honestly. Maybe you're conflicted on Ja Morant. Maybe you're sad seeing a young man and a young black man go down. It saddens me too. It breaks my heart. I think you could probably hear the passion in my voice as I talk about a kid who I'm not related to, who I never met, who I don't know, who has no association with me other than he's a black man with a black father that reminds me of me and my dad, or did remind me of me and my dad. I don't want to, I can't, like, I can't accept that it doesn't matter that a kid with all of this influence is deciding to use street culture, embrace street culture in its worst way, and brag about it and represent the worst of it. I can't ignore that. Like I said, I'm from Washington, D.C. Last summer, Brian Robinson was drafted by the Washington Commanders. Brian Robinson's a running back from Alabama, I believe. Brian Robinson was on U Street, I think, or 14th Street. Sorry, I don't have the, but the story just sticks out to me. Brian Robinson was in D.C. getting some seafood. This is a Washington Commanders draft pick. Brian Robinson gets carjacked and shot. If you know football, you know this story. Brian Robinson was carjacked and shot in broad daylight in the middle of the day. 2 weeks before the season started, shot in the leg by two juveniles. Do not tell me that these things don't matter. Do not tell me that what Ja Morant is doing doesn't matter. Now, what I also understand is that all sorts of factors go into the rise of violence within the culture. I'm not blaming hip hop. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not even saying that Ja Morant is 1,000,000% responsible for shootings or even a percent responsible for shootings. But what I'm saying is that what he's doing is unacceptable and is a slippery slope. So maybe Ja Morant isn't responsible for shootings, but he is influenced by that crap. It's clear. It's obvious. How I feel about Ja Morant is that I'm frustrated, incredibly frustrated by this, and I'm frustrated by the discourse around it. We don't need to make excuses for Ja Morant. What we need is for Ja Morant to get his punishment, and then we embrace Ja Morant. That's what you do for that knucklehead, for that youngin' on your block that can't get right. He gonna have to suffer the consequences. For too long, we've been doing this. But it's what we do after the consequences, after the punishment is dropped. What do we do for that child? What do we do for Ja Morant if he's suspended for half the season because he violated the morality clause in his contract? His job has a morality clause. So when Mr. Reddick, with all respect, says he ain't broke no law, it doesn't matter. Weed is legal in most states right now, but the NBA still has a rule against marijuana. If you smoke it on your job, and millions of jobs across America, you can get in trouble if you get caught. If I wave a gun on this show right now, if I reach down and pull out a gun and just wave it, I will get fired from my job. I have to watch what I say often on this show because I have an obligation to an organization. I work for government executive. I have an obligation to that organization. So that means the things I tweet, the things I say, how I represent that organization matters. That's how I pay my bills. I have an obligation to this brand. I have to represent it right. Anyone that comes on this show has to represent my brand properly. Period. So when it comes to the job, that's what matters. He broke the rule, period, point blank. It is what it is. When it comes to how we handle it socially, we should not be handling this man like he's gentle China. He's not. He's a young man that needs to understand the situation that he's in. Like Charles Barkley said, there's a trade-off, man. When you want to make millions and you want to represent a brand, you got a trade-off. It is what it is. It's a part of life. Just because these dudes are athletes don't mean we got to treat them special, man. Period. This kid made a terrible, terrible mistake. He's a stupid mistake. And he has to suffer the consequences. And there ain't going to be no jail or nothing like that. So, yeah, he didn't break a law. So we're not talking about throwing the man in prison. But he going to have to sit down for a minute. And then when he sits down, the most important thing we can do as a community, as fans, as people that are fellow NBA players, OGs in the league, Mr. Reddick, Mr. Barkley, Mr. O'Neal, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jordan, Mr. James, Mr. Wade, whoever. Okay, whoever, his daddy, whoever, then you embrace him. You help him understand the lesson from his punishment. That's what we do with children all the time. When my son acts up, he loses stuff. And then we teach him afterwards. We embrace him afterwards. We don't just ignore him and let him sit in the room. We say, now, this is why you lost your iPad. This is why you lost your Switch. That's what happened to me. That's what should have happened to you if it didn't. That's what needs to happen to Ja Morant. His family needs to step up. His family need to get themselves together. The NBA needs to step up. The NBA culture needs to, and for real, we need to think about our culture and think about what we're doing. As I mentioned before, I'm from Washington, D.C., and the murder rate is as high as it's ever been. And it's young people doing the shootings. And it's the entire community being impacted by it. Something is missing here. I don't mean to sound like a conservative. I don't mean to sound like someone out of touch. I'm only saying 2 + 2 always equals 4. You want to move the needle and talk about some white guy in Texas and his gun nut culture, we can have that conversation. But don't conflate the two. Don't do it. Because a mass shooting is a mass shooting. You don't care about a mass shooting when it's happening in D.C. When 6 people get lit up on a block. But if they get shot up in the mall, it's on the news. We need to question all of this stuff. We need to really discuss all this stuff. Perhaps that's a separate show. Maybe I will do that on another show. I don't want to confuse the audience on this one. All I'm trying to say is that what this kid is doing right now is more dangerous than people want to admit. Because we want to protect the kid. And I understand that. And that makes me happy, actually, because we are showing empathy for him. That shows me that a black boy can get some empathy. But at the end of the day, showing empathy doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for actions. So love on Ja Morant all you want. In fact, it's vital that we love on Ja Morant right now and kids like Ja Morant. You probably got a teenager in your house right now and you wondering what's going on with him. Might need to get scared straight. But when you scare him straight, then you embrace him. Then you say, you know what, son? This is why I did this. This is why you lost this. Now let's help you get it back. Let's help you redeem yourself. Let's help you get back on your feet. I want Ja Morant to get back on his feet. I'm a fan. But I can't condone this. I got a young man in this house who watches sports. I can't have him. No. And don't tell me it's always been like that, because it hasn't. My brother grew up watching Kobe and LeBron. Yeah, God rest Kobe. He had some issues. But for the most part, he got to watch Kobe and LeBron and D Wade and people like that. And he ain't had to see them waving guns and being goofy. He didn't have to see that. I didn't have to see that with my role models. Let's not let these youngins off the hook, man. Let's raise these youngins. Let's do right by these youngins. As adults, that's what we are supposed to do. Okay? So much love to Ja Morant and his family. You're going to go through what you're going to go through right now. Sound like a lot of y'all got some learning to do. I pray that happens for you, man. I really do. All right, man. So that's my show this week. This stuff just means a lot to me, man. I care so much for what's going on with black people and specifically black men. Obviously I was a black boy, and I know what it's like to grow up like that. I know the pressures of it, and I know, and I also know where we can do better as black men. And again, if we want to do right by Ja Morant as black men, we need to hold him responsible, and then we need to teach the lesson while he's going through the punishment. And I think that's just, again, I would hope that you all who are raising young black men or responsible for young black men in some way, or even if you're just a black man, even if you're just a black man out there and you just, you want to do better by black boys, you want to raise that next generation up. That's how we start, man. That's how we start. Okay? We lay the hammer down and then we show love afterwards, okay? That's how we should do it, at least in my opinion, okay? You let me know what you think, man. Hit me up, MSR_Adam, MSR_Adam. That's my social. Hit me up everywhere. Thank you so much for tuning into the show, guys. Remember to rate and review and subscribe to this podcast on all podcasting platforms. It's super important. Do that for me, guys, please. And also on YouTube, thank you for checking out the YouTube. Rate, review, comment, do all of that, man. And remember to ring that little bell as well, man. It really, really helps me out, man. Thank you so much. Remember to mind your mental health, ladies and gentlemen. Mind your mental health. It's so important. You got to do it, all right? Remember to mind your mental health. Remember to mind your physical health, guys. It's super important. We're going to be doing shows about this as well, man. Our health is so important, and we got to stay on top of it, especially if you're in my age bracket, all right? But more importantly, and with all of that, remember to always continue to be great. I'm up out of here. Peace.